Commanders 28, Giants 18. Welcome to Talking Giants, presented by SeatGeek. I'm your host, Bobby Skinner, here with my co-host, Justin Pennick. And the Giants fall to 0-2 for the 10th time in 12 seasons, Justin. This game is frustrating. We talked all off seasons once the schedule was set, Justin, that for the Giants to have a successful season, it was important to start hot, right? 2-0, 1-1. It was important for them to not go 0-2 like they had done so many years in a row, because of this next stretch of games, a very tough stretch of games coming up. Not to say that they couldn't steal one of those two games, but if you steal one of those two games now, you are still essentially not a playoff contender. This Giants season has started off horribly. There's coaching decisions that need to be examined. The kicker thing we're going to start with. Defensively, is Shane Bowen a good defensive coordinator? That's going to be questioned. But this is so frustrating that this Giants team lost this game to the Washington Commanders, a team where a quarterback that wasn't trying to throw the ball down the field at all, a team that has a very bad secondary, and Malik Neighbors had a great game against, and the Giants yet again are 0-2.
Yeah, man, and it stinks that guys that we feel like had good games, like Devin Singletary, Malik Neighbors, they make some costly mistakes, and it leads to the Giants losing. There's a lot of things that have led to the Giants losing, but I do want to start off with
the main reason they lost is the defense in this game. Kicker thing is going to be the biggest storyline.
I do want to start off with the kicker thing, though, because this is, we joked about it at the beginning of the stream, and you even see the tweet come up in the middle of the week, Bobby, where Graham Gano is struggling with another injury.
Yeah.
You see it come up, and it's like, well, isn't this funny? Feels like we were in a similar situation last year, and this is now multiple games because of special teams roster management, or I guess I should say special teams roster mismanagement, that the Giants have lost games. Graham Gano and his injuries, and even last week with the returner, even though that wasn't going to impact the game. 2 years in a row where you knew heading into the week that your kicker was hurt. 2 years in a row where coaching staff / front office decisions choose to not acknowledge the issue. 2 years in a row where it cost the Giants football games. I don't get it. And Bobby, I think we can like Joe Schoen's process, and we can like Brian Daboll as a coach, which I still do. But when there's dysfunction when it comes to setting up the game day roster and ensuring that everyone is ready to play, this is where it gets tough to defend the process. When there is trouble assembling a 53-man roster that, oh, by the way, hasn't even been a 53-man roster the first 2 weeks to begin the season because they probably want to save cap space because they're struggling for that. They're a rebuilding team that is in year 3 of Joe Schoen that is still struggling to find cap space, that they probably can't even field a 53-man roster that they can use for a backup kicker or a fucking returner.
It's a retired Darren Waller, too.
I don't get it, man. It gets tough to defend process, and it gets tough to defend that, Brian Daboll can coach up a good team when you have 2 years in a row where stupid special teams that no one gives two shits about, where special teams should have no impact on a game. 2 years in a row where this is costing the Giants not just a game, it's costing them games. Well,
even if they won this game 40-0, this would have been malpractice. And you can even argue that it didn't cost them the game, because you can argue that
they should have been up 21-15 or 16 in the fourth quarter.
You could argue that if they had a field goal kicker, they kick a field goal to go up 17-15, and then kick a field goal to go up 20-18.
Well, the game's tied at the end of regulation. And you're going into overtime instead of you losing the game.
What do you mean?
Because it was 21-18, the final score.
Well, they kicked a field goal at the end. Yeah, what I'm saying
but there's three extra points is the point.
The argument is that they went for it on a fourth down that they may have not went before on and scored a touchdown on that drive. Right? So, again, you can argue that it didn't decide the win or loss, but again, it should have been, if the game ended 40-0, like, this would have been insane from the New York Giants. This was totally avoidable, and this happened before. So this happened last year in the Jets game where Graham Gano was injured. It comes out the morning of the game that he's dealing with an injury, and they lost the game because of it, right? That one, they clearly lost the game of. This one, Dan Duggan tweeted out during warmups, right? And Graham Gano got added to the injury report on Saturday, but they have a backup kicker on the practice squad in Jude McAtamney. Dan Duggan tweeted, Gano didn't look comfortable at all during warmups, wincing after most kicks. He then cut his warm-up short and jogged off the field. Punter Jamie Gillian was now taking warm-up field goals. Who could have seen a kicker with a groin injury being a problem? It's happened to them in the past. And here's the other thing. They had the roster spot, right? Like we talked about last week, how a move that wouldn't be talked about a lot, but is a really bad thing, is not having a backup punt returner for,
they had 2 roster spots
Gunnar
available last
Olszewski,
week.
right? Gunnar Olszewski was hurt, got hurt, re-injured in pregame. They don't have a punt returner, and if it was a close game, it would have cost them, right? Because or it could have cost them because Darius Slayton was not ready to return a punt. This week they had 52 guys on the roster. They elevated Ty Summers and Timon Fox from the practice squad for special teams. Ty Summers, this was the second time that he was elevated. He's a part of this plan. Like he's when he runs out of elevations after next week, he's probably going to get added to the 53-man roster. So they could have added Ty Summers to the 53-man roster and used a practice squad elevation on the backup kicker and been out of this problem. So it's just not like it's unserious type of screw up, right? It is not this. Oh, how could like Daboll was asked, like, if you knew that would happen, would you have had a backup plan? He's like, yeah, well, if injury, but every other position on the team does have a backup plan.
Yeah, what was his reasoning? But the line that he was using, we just didn't think that Graham Gano was going to.
Yeah, they thought Graham Gano was good, but guess what? In pregame warmups, he wasn't good. Right? He went in early, and Jamie Gillian had to practice kicking field goals because he wasn't good.
And the football grump said it perfectly. He tweeted out, "It's completely unacceptable. The New York Giants continue to not have a game ready roster 2 weeks in a row." I mean, again, like you can. During the stretch of losing where there will be defenses of Joe Schoen, defenses of Brian Daboll, or calls for them to be fired, what's really difficult to comprehend is that these guys for 2 years in a row have had trouble putting together rosters on game days. It's mind-blowing. We've seen bad football, Bobby. We've been covering the Giants for a couple years now. This is one of the first times that I've seen a coaching staff and a front office have this amount of trouble putting together a game-ready roster. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's brutal. So a huge screw up. Now, the real issue the Giants lost this game was defensively.
Yeah.
Justin, why don't you talk to us about something before we talk about that?
Yeah, for sure. Captain Morgan, they're bringing you every single episode of Talking Giants this year. They're along for the ride, and oh boy, it could be bumpy on that ship. Captain Morgan, it's the official Spice Rum sponsor of the NFL. You want to know what ride isn't going to be bumpy? If you join the Legends when you follow the captain on the 100th season with Giants 100th season, if you join Victor Cruz on September 26th when the Giants take on the Cowboys for an immersive game day experience, the captain's cruise with Cruz. Get it? Fans 21 or over in the tri-state area can enter for a chance to attend. And if you're not in the New York area, you could be the lucky winner who gets to grab a member of your crew and get flown to New York City to be part of how the captain does game day. Head to followthecaptain.com by September 19 to win a sailgate experience like no other. That's followthecaptain.com. No purchase necessary. US 21 plus, 25 plus for grand prize. Ends 3/5/25, subject to drawing deadlines for specific prizes, subject to rules at www.captainmorgan.com/followthecaptain. Sponsor, Diego Americas Incorporated, New York, New York. Captain Morgan Original Spice Rum, 35% alcohol by volume. Captain Morgan Rum Company, New York, New York. Please drink responsibly. Captain's orders. You'll be glad you did. Defense.
You'll be glad you did. And
here's you want to hear a fact? Fun fact. Giants became the first team in, this is per Jeff Kerr, CBS. Giants became the first team in NFL history to score 3+ touchdowns, allow no touchdowns, and lose in regulation.
So, I mean, the Commanders scored on 7 of 7 drives versus the Giants.
Yeah.
But they held them all to field goals. So it's like, oh, bend, don't break. That's
0 for 6 in red zone efficiency. And the Giants were 3 for 3 in red zone efficiency.
Yeah, so that's like that's like, oh, that's what Shane Bowen's trying to run as a defense. Yeah. You can't have that happen versus the Commanders, right? If you were playing the Kansas City Chiefs and you had this, right, you want better than that, but you probably will live with that type of performance from your defense. Versus the Commanders, versus a quarterback who's not trying to push the ball down the field at all.
It's a glorified high school offense where they're throwing screens and the quarterback can run.
And just running the ball. Like, it was to me, is a pathetic performance out of the defense outside of Andrew Phillips. I thought it was a bad defensive game all around. Like, majority of the starters in this game. And like we talked about, Jaden Daniels threw the ball behind the line of scrimmage 13 times. And you can and they had success with it, right? They had success with it. Continue to like play from off coverage, and they're just going to take that type of stuff because Jaden Daniels doesn't want to push the ball down the field. When you had success is when you actually did run some blitzes, right? When you get down at the goal line, you had Jason Pinnock blitzing or Dane Belton blitzing. That's when you actually had success defensively. Yeah. They didn't have success anywhere else. You know, they gave
10 tackles for loss, and they forced 0 punts today.
Yeah, and a lot of the plays were like Drew Phillips making a play, right? You know, like Drew Phillips' sack was not on a blitz. It was on Jaden Daniels just holding onto the football and him rushing in and getting a play. Like the lack of pass rush from Brian Burns, Dexter Lawrence. Kayvon didn't have a bad game when you'll go back and watch the film and see he did pretty decent. But like you just needed more from your star players,
and especially Burns, man.
Like these were the 7 drives, right? It wasn't even just like they got a big play and that was it. The first drive, 16 plays, 64 yards, 10 plays, 43 yards, 14 plays, 74 yards, 9 for 56, 9 for 59, 9 for 45, and then 8 for 65 when they kicked the field goal at the end. So a drive they cut short early on their own was the shortest drive of the game for them with 8 plays. That's crazy. You didn't even sniff a 3 and out in this game. And on third down, when we needed them to step up, Jaden Daniels, they converted 7 of 14, 50%.
They were 8 for 15 if you include a fourth down, too.
Yeah, and, Jaden Daniels, 4 for 7, 62 yards, 2 runs, 24 yards. Their running backs had 63 yards on 4 rushes on third down. It was just all around bad defensively. Yeah. And if that's happening against the Commanders, and you saw what the Vikings did last week, basically scoring at will, then get ready to face good offensive teams, which actually is not the strength of this, this strong part of the schedule. But still, like if the Commanders are doing that, then everyone else is going to do it too.
And it's not like, all right, well, Washington had all these third downs, but they were 3rd and 4. No, Washington's offense averaged 8.13 yards to go on third down, and they ended up going 8 for 15 on 3rd and 4th down attempts. That's 53%. It's bad. It's bad. This should be a defense that is salivating at the idea of getting a quarterback into 3rd and long, regardless of their. And credit to Jaden Daniels, he's a tough guy back there. Didn't go down easily, but this is a defense that should be salivating, a front 4 that should be like, oh my god, I can't wait to get a quarterback into 3rd and long, and they did that constantly. 3rd and 10, third down and longer to go than 10. They did that all day, man. They did it exactly what you're supposed to do. Couldn't get off the field. Let's
talk about the pass rush. Now, these aren't 100% accurate numbers, but PFF has – I don't even want to tweet about it, but PFF is like kind of been doing live tracking, and then as soon as the game is over, it goes away. But Kayvon had 2 quarterback hits and 2 pressures on a 15% win rate, and the film matches it. Like, that's a solid game for Kayvon, but I think it should be better against the Commanders. Brian Burns, 2 pressures, a 13% win rate, and then Dex, 2 pressures, a 3% win rate.
What percent win rate?
3%.
Oh.
Right now, they were doubling Dex a lot, but you still expect Dex to be greater than that. Here's where I'm the most frustrated with Burns, right? Like you could see some wins in there for Burns, but when you make the trade that the Giants did for Brian Burns, and this is kind of what Brian Burns has been in his career too, right? We broke it down when they did the trade. Like he needs to be better than what he's been.
Yeah, our Brian Burns reaction episode isn't overly positive,
even though he's like a really good pass rusher. Like, you need to be a guy who changes the game, and he hasn't done that in week 1 or week 2. And the Commanders, like, he got one-on-ones, too. He wasn't doubled every play. There was huge third-down conversions where he was one-on-one, and he got beat by a bad tackle that the Commanders roll out there. And it's not just, Brian Burns hasn't had a good first 2 games, but when you trade a 2nd-round and a 5th-round pick, commit $30 million per year, you essentially created 3 extra holes on this team to get Brian Burns, and you have to get more out of that. And if Dex is getting doubled and triple teamed, then those guys should not be getting double teamed, right? And if like you need to be creating more one-on-ones, there's just after watching the first game of film with this defense, I was like, there's really nothing impressive. There was nothing on this defensive game plan in week 1, watching all 22 film, where I'm like, oh, this is actually really good football. Like there was nothing where I'm like, he gave us an advantage, Shane Bowen. In this game, again,
he relies on his good players. You're supposed to win up front. This is what this team is supposed to do, and they're not doing it. They're not winning up front.
You can still look for schematic advantages, and there's just not. There's lack of it's just they rotate the safeties.
But we knew this coming in. Shane Bowen has hand up, said we're going to rely on the front four to win, and they're not winning.
Yeah. That is the biggest issue with this Giants defense right now.
It's not like Wink where it's, we're gonna win in spite of kind of individual performance because we're gonna throw changeups and stuff like that. No, that's not what this is. We're gonna ask our players to dominate up front and win, and they're not winning.
Yeah. Even if you're like, oh, Brian Burns, he won here and one here. You can't have the reliance on that front four and not come away from a game being like, I know they did it. I know that they did it, right? Like, you just can't have that. Dexter Lawrence did it in week 1, and nobody else did it. I posted all the clips of Kayvon struggling. Burns had some nice plays, but not consistent enough to win this game, to win for this defense. And this defense has just not been able to get off the field.
But I mean,
offense has been able to march down on them. And the issue, personnel-wise, has been that like you mentioned, that those guys haven't won. That Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau have not done enough to change games. Like, I don't want to hear about, like, they're not getting consistent pressure, one, but they have not done enough to change games.
But I mean, forget even going after the quarterback and going after the passer here. I mean, 35 attempts, 215 yards, and 6.1 yards per carry. And Brian Robinson is getting, he had a gain of like 32 yards and a run of 40 yards, which were two of his longest runs of his entire career.
They were the 2 longest runs of his entire career.
So, I mean, the fact that we're allowing that to happen, that's also bad. It's really bad.
Well, and that's the thing is, Shane Bowens has a good run defense. And, I did those all 22 streams in the offseason of Shane Bowens' defense. And I'm like, man, they got some run defenders up front for Tennessee. They've got some run, and the Giants just don't have that, right? They have Dexter Lawrence. Nacho's a solid run defender. He's not a difference maker. And Kayvon and Burns are not great edge setters in the run game. They're really not. And like you said, teams have been able to run, like Aaron Jones ran the ball on them. Like, this is going to be another bottom 5 rushing team probably for this team. If it continues like this, you're going to have another bottom 5 rushing defense for the 3rd straight year. And it's like, okay, so when you come away from leaving week 2, and when you take Dexter Lawrence off the field, it's just easy runs for them.
Oh yeah, forgot that.
What does this defensive scheme do?
I don't know.
Unless you just say bend, don't break, but you can't bend, don't break like that versus the Washington Commanders.
No,
you can't allow them to get, and 7 scoring drives.
And also the Commanders did them a ton of favors. How many times did the Commanders get to a 1st and goal situation, 2nd and goal situation, and then we have a false start? They have a penalty. They shoot themselves in the foot. And then it's like, oh, Giant, then I finally took a sigh of relief being like, all right, this is when the drive is gonna stall. Because that's what happens on a drive where you run a lot of plays. Somebody's going to eventually make a mistake, and that's what happened. So they shot themselves in the foot. It's not even like, I wouldn't even say the Giants like clamped up. A lot of times they Washington shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah, so it's really worrisome for what this defense is going to look like, because we know the secondary is rough, but if the pass rush isn't getting home, I mean, you're going to have what happened.
There is no identity in this defense of the pass rush.
They're going to go 7 for 7 on scoring drives. The Vikings scored 3 touchdowns on their first 5 drives last week, and that's against Sam Darnold and Jaden Daniels, right? And I know Jaden Daniels can run the ball really well. I don't come away from this game impressed with he didn't want to throw the ball down the field. He did not want to throw the ball down the field. He had 13 throws behind the line of scrimmage. Obviously, that's on Cliff Kingsbury too, but there was really no attempt to do it, and they just got beat consistently. And again, now I actually don't blame Shane Bowen for this. I blame the personnel, because they had Isaiah Simmons out there as a spy and stuff. You can't let him turn a 3rd and 13 into a scramble for a first down. Like, you can't have those types of plays, and they allow them to. Yeah. But I come away from this game being like, we said on the preview pod, like specifically for Brian Burns, anything short of dominance was a disappointment, and I come away disappointed with Brian Burns 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, no, but you did mention Kayvon Thibodeau had a decent game, and Dog Analytics tweeted this out from Next Gen that Kayvon Thibodeau improved his get off time to cross the line of scrimmage this season compared to his first 2 years, where it's down to 0.75 seconds. 0.75 seconds would have ranked top 10 in the NFL last year, so that's through 2 weeks. And in 2023 and 2022, it's been 0.85 and 0.83. He also generated, according to Next Gen, 5 pressures on 29 pass rush snaps. That's a 17.2% pressure rate. That would have been the 4th highest pressure rate in a game of his career. That's according to Next Gen, which does stuff differently from PFF. So, I mean, Kayvon had a good game, but again, just still disappointed. You're mainly disappointed with Brian Burns and everybody. So,
yeah, and I come away disappointed with Shane Bowen. Whereas, like, what defensively are you doing to give us an advantage? Like, I don't care if that's the identity. It's like there needs to be something done on the back end. There needs to be different, more disruptive looks and different. Like, you got to be throwing some real deal disguises, not just some rotating the safety into cover 3.
Yeah. There was wasn't there even a play today where they're blitzing? Oh no, I think that was Dane Belton's fault. Where they're bracketing down low and they ran a blitz, like a 6-man blitz, and they didn't play man coverage on the back end.
Oh yeah, that was the Jaden Daniels like rolled to the right and threw the ball to Zach Ertz on a 3rd down.
Yeah, where
they blitz, they send 6, and they're running just like kind of 4 guys back at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, you mentioned that like Dane Belton probably was in the wrong spot, but still.
Yeah, it's just it's frustrating defense. And now the one guy who's not frustrating on defense is Drew Phillips.
Oh,
12 tackles.
Very wrong on Drew Phillips.
A sack, 2 tackles for a loss, and his defensive holding was
It was bogus.
It was. I mean, Zach Ertz just ran through him.
That would have been a 4th down, right?
Yeah, right. And that's where it's like that could make the difference of the game.
Tough.
Now he gave up 3 catches. Justin, you know how many yards he gave up?
7.
4.
Nice.
You even got that.
How many tackles for loss is he on pace for?
He is on pace for. Let me do the math real quick.
You tweeted it out.
That was in the beginning of the game.
Oh.
He is now on pace for 25.5 tackles for loss, which I do believe would probably end up leading the NFL. And he's on pace for 8.5 sacks, which is also pretty good.
Pretty good. I was wrong. Hand up.
Yeah. Hey, I still want to see some teams that like throw the ball down the field, and he played well in week 1, but he only played a handful of snaps.
Listen, he's tackled well, which that was like the main concern that I had about Drew Phillips. And coming up at stopping the run, I think you're seeing the importance of a nickel corner when stopping the run. You see
the physicality, right? Like that was he was like the scouting report was like this, but that, right? It was like the very physical but struggles to tackle. Well, he's been tackling really well, and that maybe that helps. He's not open field outside corner, one-on-one with guys, but he forced a fumble in week 1. Like we've been talking about this for a long time, like how important run defense is for nickel corners in today's NFL, man, and he freaking brought it. Like it's a huge part of run defense. Now the fact that the Giants gave up over 200 rushing yards doesn't make you feel great about it, but that's not on Andrew Phillips. That's on the guys up front, the linebackers. Karake missed a tackle in this game. So Drew Phillips is the one thing you can be excited about on this defense. Any other defensive notes before we switch to the offense?
No.
We could talk. We have to talk about my favorite defender, and that's Corona Extra. Y'all know, what I always try to be? A fan that never loses. Hard to be as a New York Giants fan. Here's what I mean. The Giants don't win every single week or any week, but even when they lose, I'm still loving the game. I've still got passion. I'm still loving football. You guys can tell that. Because whether it's a big, deep ball or some 3rd and short conversions or just a great tailgate on the parking lot, there's always something to cheer for. And the best beer to pair with awesome moments, Corona, which is truly my favorite beer. My fridge is stacked with them at home. I have them with a nice steak, at night. And the best Corona is all about finding the maximum amount of joy with every moment of the game, win or lose, at home or on the road. It's the perfect beer to go along with watching football and all the moments that come with it. So cheers to everyone who loves the game beyond the scoreboard. Corona, for the fan who never loses. Get yours at ordercorona.com for 21 plus. Relax responsibly. Corona Extra Beer, imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois. You'll be glad you did.
Never lost.
The other guy I was a little disappointed, even though his box score stats are really nice, is because Jason Pinnock had 2 sacks. He had a tackle for loss as well. There was 2 plays where he had the defensive holding on the first drive of the game, which would have been ended up in a field goal, and they stayed on the field because of that defensive holding. And then the first time Jaden Daniels actually really threw the ball down the field, it was an ugly, ugly pass on 3rd down, and he's there to make a play, and Zach Ertz just grown man's the ball away from him.
Oh, yeah, it could have maybe been a pick.
Like that could, those are 2 plays that the Giants win the game if Pinnock doesn't have a holding call on that, and if he comes up with that turnover on Zach Ertz. Because again, one or two plays does change this game because the Commanders literally scored on every single drive. So that's it. Offensively,
well, and even defensively too. A request for the film review, and then even a request maybe for the mailbag pod is what's happening. I mean, there's clearly a reason where, and it can't just be lack of interior defensive lineman depth outside of Dex. Like I want to know what these linebackers are doing. Micah McFadden and Bobby Okereke. We're allowing 6 yards per carry here. Bobby Okereke can't be perfect if that's happening. So
yeah, we will
break it down.
We'll get into all that. Man,
we got to talk about the offense.
That'll be something. That's a great question for the mailbag pod this week. Where do you want to start for? Because this was a solid offensive game for the Giants, right? Like they only got 7 drives. That's the down part of the defense being on the field, but they scored touchdowns on 3 of them. They punted twice, and then they had a turnover on downs on the Malik Neighbors drop, and then the fumble by Devin Singletary, which is frustrating that like the 2 guys who got yards for them on offense had bad plays that will be remembered and change the outcome, right? Like we say for the Giants defense, if they make this play or this play, the game's over. Game's over. The Commanders defense was able to make those plays. I guess the Malik Neighbors drop isn't making a play, but Jeremy Chin popping the ball from Devin Singletary. We could do about DJ, but I mean, this was Malik Neighbors is a star. It's so easy to see. He had 127 yards on 10 catches. I think that might be the Giants' best receiving game since Darius Slayton in 2020 against the Cowboys when he had 129 yards. And it was a truly Malik Neighbors or bust type of game. He had 127 of Daniel Jones, 178 yards. That's 71%. He had 18 targets of DJ's 28 attempts. That's 64%, which, by the way, is the 3rd highest target share since 2000, according to Doug Analytics. He had 85 yards of yak, which is 67% of his yards came from yak, and you see it, right? That 2-minute drill drive at the end of the half.
Oh, where they score 7, and when's the last time the Giants have gotten the ball in a 2-minute situation? Also, they started with fucking running the ball. But when's the last time Giants got the ball in a 2-minute situation where it's like they just march up and down the field, they take what the defense gives you, Malik Neighbors creates with the yards after the catch, and there's an opportunity for a 2-for-1 where, boom, they put, I think they put at least 6 points on the board, they put a touchdown on the board, and then you get the ball back to start the second half, and you're feeling great.
Yeah, and then
Singletary fumbles.
It was a 69-yard drive in that game. You have Malik Neighbors for 13 yards. Malik Neighbors for 21 yards, and then Malik Neighbors for a touchdown, which I'm glad he got that touchdown out of the way. But the two plays, right, were yak plays, right, where they throw a 6-yard hitch, bam, plant your foot in the ground, get upfield, and had that again. Was targeted on 3rd down, had that 4th down conversion towards the end of the game, even though he had the 4th down drop, where like the Giants have not had anybody since Odell where it's 4th down and 3, and you throw a 4-yard hitch. Like, that's malpractice if that's anybody but Malik Neighbors on this roster. So it's so easy to see he's a star. It is frustrating that he did contribute to losing, though, too, even though he's the reason the Giants' offense was in this game. If he catches that pass on 4th down,
I think the game's over. They would have to score. They would have to score because I don't know if they would kick the field goal, but I think they were going to score that drive. They were running the ball well.
Well, they at least get into overtime. And here's another part of this, and we got frustrated in the moment because we were streaming. That drive did end in a 4th and 4 on that drop, right? So would a 5 yards been a big deal there? I think so. Well, after the play before, Malik Neighbors doesn't get lined up. Like, I don't know what happened.
Yeah, you have a positive play, and then what the Giants just aren't good enough where if you have a positive play on offense like that, great. And then Malik Neighbors has the negative play where it's the illegal formation. He's not set. And then it brings you back 5 yards and it's 1st and 15. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah. So he doesn't get set and you have the 1st and 15. Now, again, I'm not going to lose my mind. Like, I am not leaving this game.
Well, it's the little things. It's the little things that when you're not a good football team, it's the little things that wind up in losses.
Sure. I agree 100%. And he deserves blame for those. But I also am not going to leave this game.
No, I'm not mad at Malik Neighbors. I'm not mad at Malik Neighbors, no.
He's the reason they were in this game. I mean, that right before that formation illegal shift penalty was a 3rd and 9 that Malik Neighbors converted for 25 yards.
Not mad at Malik Neighbors. Would have been great if we can kick an extra point. Would have been great if the defense could force a punt.
Yeah. So like Malik Neighbors is a star, right?
Yeah.
He has 190 yards through 2 games. Let's do the on pace game for that. That'd be pretty good. I actually did do that. He's on pace for over 1,600 yards. I'm like,
It's gonna happen. No.
hell yeah.
For Walt, our friend Walt, WBG84, Malik Neighbors is 21 years old, 49 days. He's the youngest player in NFL history with 10 plus reception, 100 plus receiving yards, and 1 touchdown in a game. And something that I love too, 8 yards after the catch per reception. Obviously, we know that the average depth of target was low, but it was plus 1.5 yards after the catch over expectation. And Bobby, something that I've talked about for years. We've maybe mentioned time and time again is that you turn on a nationally televised game where usually the offenses are good and fun, and there's just plays where offense is easy. It's like, quarterbacks can just drop back, boop, and it's like, all right, here's a 6-7 yard gain on first down. And I finally felt like watching Malik Neighbors, it's like, all right, well, the whole phrase of take what the defense gives you, right? If Washington's going to be playing in cushion, if they're going to give you cushion at the line, run that little hitch and then watch what Malik Neighbors does with the ball in his hands, where it's a pitch and catch for Daniel Jones, where something that could result in 2-3 yards for other receivers that don't have good stop and go and don't have the acceleration, don't have the yak. Malik Neighbors has that yak. The pitch and catch is going to be easy, and it turns what could be a 2 to 3 yard gain into an 8-9 yard gain or even a 10-yard gain. And then one of the reasons we haven't even spoken about Daniel Jones yet,
which is crazy.
Episode, but one of the reasons why Daniel Jones has averaged up
that might be
target,
the record for not mentioning Daniel Jones on a recap pod,
especially in a week where we thought he could be benched and this could be his final game. One of the reasons why Daniel Jones' average depth of target was 10.3, which is in the 81st percentile in the NFL, is because you had those long hitch routes as well, where it's easy, man. It's easy when the Giants were last in the NFL last year in plays of 10 to 19 yards. You're playing Malik Neighbors off. You're giving him cushion. You're giving cushion to Darius Slayton, and these guys can just boop like on a dime, quick turn on the sideline, and it's an easy pitch and catch for 12, 13 yards on first down. That's what Malik Neighbors is going to bring to this offense. Just easy, quick answers, whether it's short, intermediate, or deep, and we haven't even seen the deep stuff yet.
Yeah, well, we have seen some deep stuff.
We've seen big explosive plays, which is nice.
Yeah, we haven't seen the convert on the deep stuff.
Right.
So let's talk about Daniel Jones in this. And here's the part that pisses me off. We talk about Malik Neighbors having a great game. The offensive line had a great game, and we're sitting here talking about fucking 0-2. Like, that sucks. But
this is the best the offensive line's looked in a decade.
So
plus,
let's talk about Daniel Jones, because last week was bad. Last week was really, really bad, and there were worries like, is he broken coming off of the torn ACL? Are they going to have to go to Drew Lock, who inspires no confidence in us, who's been, has been worse than Daniel Jones in his career, obviously. So it's a positive in the side of like, all right, maybe Daniel Jones isn't broken to where he should be benched for Drew Lock. That's a positive. I don't come away from this. No one should come away from this game as a victory lap for Daniel Jones. It's a bad Commanders defense. And he wasn't perfect and not expecting perfection. But what we did see, which is, when we talked on the preview pod, and you're like, do you expect DJ to do it? I was like, I expect him to be able to hit Malik Neighbors versus a man coverage. And that's what Daniel Jones was able to do. So he had a solid NFL game. 16 of 28, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. That's a solid NFL game. Now, where I still am worried is the accuracy on the deep throws. He was 0 for 4 on deep passes. That's something that showed up in camp. That's something that showed up in preseason. That's something that showed up in the regular season now.
Post-snap processing, there was Malik Neighbors on a drag that he should have hit. Instead, he forces the ball to Wandale.
That was like that play is called shallow cross. Wandale runs a sit. You are hoping that they go and cover the sit and throw it to there. Not there. He missed Wandale on the second drive of the game on a third down that would have been a first down conversion. So again, not perfect, but what we did see is like, okay, we don't need to have the conversation about going to Drew Lock. At least for another,
not yet.
At least for another week, hopefully.
Yeah, but the reality of the situation is still this commander secondary. I don't care what this commander secondary is bad.
Yes.
And even though Daniel Jones' EPA per play, I believe, was in the 75th percentile, I don't care. This is a game where I am looking at Daniel Jones still threw for only 178 yards, and he went 16 for 28. That's
you got to hit. You got to hit your deep passes when you take them.
Yeah.
And yeah, this was a bad second, but. You look at what they put on the menu, and DJ did the job outside the deep passes. But you can't have outside the deep passes when you're Daniel Jones. So
yeah, you want to know why we've went almost 35 minutes without talking about Daniel Jones? Is because that's the game that I think he had. I don't think this is a game to write home about if you're a Daniel Jones defender, to be like, see, he's not the problem. At least that's my opinion. And he gets to keep his job for another week. That's the game that I think Daniel Jones.
Which I was hoping for. I was not hoping to go to. I was dreading, having the take of the Giants to go to Drew Lock.
I thought that. Now, granted, it is a Daniel Jones W because I thought we were going to be in that spot.
I am very happy that we're not in that spot.
I think it's inevitable, though.
As somebody who wants to get through this season, I am happy that we are not after week 2 saying that. I think it is inevitable. We'll see, but
the fact that is going to be nuts. The fact that we're not throwing for over 200 yards against this Commanders defense is it's bad.
Yeah, you miss Malik Neighbors on a few deep passes too. Miss Malik Neighbors Malik Neighbors could have had more production, which is crazy to think about. He did all this without having a deep catch. The offensive line is where you do get happy. Now, the Browns are going to be a different story next week. So if the Browns defense gets home, I'm not crying. I'm not, saying, oh, we were duped, because the Browns defense is nuts. 1 sack for 3 yards wasn't credited to the offensive line. They ran the ball really well. Six yards per carry. And again, these aren't the official statistics, but Andrew Thomas pitched a shutout again. John Runyon gave up 1 pressure. Jermaine Eleanor gave up 1 quarterback hit. And then JMS and Greg Van Roten gave up 2 pressures. Greg Van Roten being the worst offensive lineman on this team and doing what he's doing is a huge win.
Great development.
JMS looks so I was worried that JMS had a solid week 1 versus the Vikings. You're playing a Commanders defensive front that's different, and him not being there was a solid game for JMS.
We didn't say Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, or Johnny Newton's name once.
Not one time.
We didn't say any of their names once.
And you look at their successful plays, there's just protection, man. There is just flat out time to throw the damn ball. Time to throw the ball down the field 4 times, 20-plus yards. There was, running the ball really well. This offensive line is performing really, really well, right? Even last week when you're oh, the run blocking wasn't great. And I know you don't want to judge solely off of the Giants' pass offensive lines. Okay, yeah, it wasn't great. It surely wasn't great. But last year, that offensive line didn't allow Saquon Barkley to average 4 yards per carry. Right? Didn't allow there was not disaster plays from that offensive line last week in the run game, and then this week they were just flat out good, right? Devin Singletary having over 90 yards and would have had more if he doesn't fumble the ball, right?
They were kicking ass that drive. What was? Oh, it's such a shame, that drive, man. And I'm going to talk about something right after I mention this, because we got to fit 4 ads in this episode. Hello.
They had a run for 11 yards, and then they had that DJ sack, and then a run for 15 yards.
Yeah, that play coming out of the half, where it's all right, end of the first half, score 6, get the ball back, we're up 3. And I talked during halftime. I'm all right, this drive's big, man. This drive is so important because remember 2022, Bobby, where that tie, the Giants had a 7-point lead throughout the entire second half, and they allowed the Commanders to stay in the game. They didn't make it a 10-point lead. They didn't make it a 14-point lead. They kept it at 7-7-7, and then boom, they finally allowed when the levee breaks, as Led Zeppelin says. So that's why that drive to start the second half was so important, because if you put 7 points on the board, you have a 10-point lead. That's a 2-score lead, or you have an 11-point lead. It's a 2-score lead, and that's huge. It changes the dynamic of the game. So it's 2 plays in that second half. It takes them 2 plays to cross the 50-yard line. And I'm oh hell yeah, we're cooking. And then Daniel Jones takes a 3-yard sack on first down. It's shit. All right, well, how are you gonna reset? How are you gonna avoid 3rd and long? They avoid on that fucking play. On that play, second and 13.
They were at the Washington's 35 if he doesn't
second and 13.
Ball.
You not only avoid 3rd down, you get a first down on a running play on a 2nd and long, and I'm oh my God, this is great. We're avoiding 3rd down. First, second down, I need to fumble the ball, and shit. This episode is brought to you by Clinton Hall. What a transition. This episode of Talking Giants is brought to you by Clinton Hall. You're home to watch all things NFL. That's one of the more abrupt transitions we've ever had.
Why don't you talk to us about something?
Clinton Hall has several locations across NYC, 36th Street, 51st Street, 51st Street, Fidei, And the Bronx near Fordham. It's an awesome spot for large groups, corporate events, and after-work happy hour. Clinton Hall is NYC owned and operated since day one, and it's home for the Giants, Jets, and all NYC sports. And did you know that Clinton Hall is the winner of the Food Network NYC Food and Wine Festival Best Burger, the Double Smash? They have a selection of over 20 beers on tap, perfectly poured by their innovative draft system, the Flux Capacitor. That's how you say it. So head over to Clinton Hall. You're home for
What'd
large...
you just say?
Capacitor.
The flux capacitor.
Capacitor.
Watch Back to the Future one time.
Nope. I refuse. I am tired. So head on over to Clinton Hall. You're home for large groups, corporate events, and after work happy hour. They also know a thing or two about NYC sports. Wink. You'll be glad you did.
Be glad you did.
So it's a shame.
Like, the O-line report is going to be fun the first 2 weeks of the season, and we're 0-2 against the weakest teams on the schedule.
It's a shame that every single year...
Vikings aren't the weakest team on the schedule, but the Commanders are.
Every single year,
besides the Panthers.
We've been begging for good offensive line play. You know, we've had Andrew Thomas, and he's been a bright spot, and, you know, at times he's helped keep the unit afloat. But it's a shame that now we're looking at this offensive line and like, yeah, they're kind of kicking a little bit of ass. And it's all for what? To be 0-2. It's a shame.
Yeah.
It's a shame.
It's a shame. It's a shame we have to freaking cover this.
The Giants' offensive line being good is now an underrated talking point of the 2023 season.
Let's look at what the
2024 season.
Yeah, the offensive line allowed for 129 rushing yards, 6 yards per carry, and they accounted for 1 quarterback hit and 5 pressures. That's a dream. Right? And I was a little worried, not about the tackles. I'm not worried about the Thomas and Jermaine. What I was a little worried about is like, Vikings interior rush is just not good at all. And, you know, Greg Van Roten was the worst last week. Runyon wasn't perfect. That it would kind of come collapsing down a little bit. You know, remember Rob Sale talking points after the Saints game, you know, in 2021? That the interior would struggle. But they did better against a better interior rush, right? Yeah. Like they did better versus a better interior rush. And again, like even there were some losses, right? Like you give up a quarterback hit and 5 pressures, there's going to be some losses in there. The losses are not disaster losses either, right? And that's the difference between having a guy like Greg Van Roten as your out there and Mark Lewinsky last year, what he was doing, where it's like these are disaster losses. They're picking stuff up. They're working well in the run game. The offensive line looks flat out good. You know why I think a big part of it is?
Why? Because
cheat days aside, what the Giants' offensive line put in their body matters to them.
Oh.
And they want to fuel it with the best stuff out there. Our next sponsor, Orgain, makes it so easy to do just that. I really like Orgain. They sent me some these 30-gram protein shakes.
Oh, they're in my fridge right now.
Yeah. So there's some other things in my fridge I mentioned. They're in my fridge. I pop one open to get my day going. Orgain is really, really nice.
Helps keep down that hunger.
And it tastes good, too. Like, it just tastes like chocolate milk. Orgain is the leader in real protein-powered nutrition that understands that being good for you doesn't have to taste bad. Wow, I even talked about that before I said that. They sent us their brand new 30-gram complete protein shake, and it is awesome. The shake offers protein-packed real nutrition designed to satisfy your cravings without all the sugar. I worked at a restaurant, and they had the big bucket of sugar, and they spelled it S-U-R-G-A-R. I'm going to call it sugar. That's not how it's spelled in real life. Sorry about that, Jade Palace. It gives me energy to keep going. Even when the Giants are 0-2, I got energy. It helps manage my hunger. And Orgain is convenient, real nutrition I'm looking for, made with no artificial flavors or sweeteners. Orgain 30-gram protein shakes are available at Costco. We're Costco guys. And Orgain.com. If you want to get in on the delicious protein pack nutrition today, head to Orgain.com/Giants20 and use code Giants20 for 20% off your order. That's easy. Remember, a lot of 20 and Giants in there. Once again, that's Orgain.com/Giants20 for 20% off, and make sure you use promo code Giants20 so they know we sent you. You'll be glad you did.
Boom! Hey, here's I don't know if you talked about this, but Research Rick tweeted this out a couple minutes ago. Washington on third down. How many yards per carry did they average on rushing attempts?
15. I already did this.
4. Oh, yeah.
No, 16. They had was it 15 or 16?
It was 6 rushes, 86 yards, 14.3. That's
third down?
That's what Research Rick has. Do you dare?
On third down?
On third down.
Did he include fourth down?
I don't think he did.
I think he included, because on running back handoffs, they had 4 runs for 63 yards.
We bring the boom! I recently got into the Costco guys.
We're Costco guys.
I've enjoyed them.
Where do you think
they've brought some sanity to my life?
The conversation on Schoen and Daboll goes?
Do
you think they're in jeopardy?
They need to win football games, Bobby. I mean, we do this every year, and we do the song and dance not every year.
We didn't do it the last 2 years.
No, we didn't do it the last 2 years. We kind of did it last year.
No, we really didn't. We knew it was not going to happen last year.
It's because they won games. If they win football games, and if they find a way to win, then their jobs will be safe. And if they don't win football games, then they will lose their jobs.
Here's where I'm not worried, because if they deserve to lose their jobs, they lose their jobs, and we start over again, unfortunately. And
I don't even know where I am and what I want right now.
And again, I want to save some of that. Like, we have a long season. I do want to save some of that conversation.
I don't think you need to have an opinion on that right now.
But here's my worry, is we've talked about it all offseason. Brian Daboll has done a better job than Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen has not brought in good players through the draft, or not enough, right? They don't have their answer at quarterback. Brian Daboll has done better. He pulled out 6 wins with that roster last year. Was coach of the year before. Brian Daboll, I think, did do a good job the first 2 years. We also know Brian Daboll, he's not someone who handles the media great. A little bit of a hothead. Basically ran out his defensive coordinator. It's keeping Kafka on for, basically PR reasons, that he will, in a sense, crumble under these losses and pressure. So I hate that we're doing this after 3 years, but it is where they're at, Justin. But we'll do O-line report, film review, mailbag, clean it all up, see what changes in our thoughts come from Wednesday. But 0-2 feels really fucking familiar for Talking Giants. There's only been 1 year where we haven't done it. And maybe I'm overreacting, but I feel worse about this 0-2 than I have other ones. 2019, they moved to Daniel Jones. 2020, didn't feel good. That didn't feel good, but it is what it is. 2021, you had that offensive performance by Daniel Jones. They missed the field goal.
They need to find their quarterback.
Or they don't, the Commanders make the field goal.
They need to. I mean, at the end of the day, this is kind of what the NFL is about. It's about, it's a team sport, but also at the same time, if you get a good quarterback with the good brain on offense, it could change everything. So if that's what Brian Daboll needs, if that's what the next person needs, I don't know. I'm rooting for Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen because I don't want to do this again. But the more decisions that they make, like with the stupid kicker thing, the more just like, hey, say what you could kill Joe Schoen all you want about the Daniel Jones contract. The Daniel Jones contract is not as bad as the Brian Burns contract, because especially when you include what?
I disagree with that.
You disagree with that? Paying an edge rusher over $30 million a year if he's not going to be an impact player, plus trading away a high leverage second round pick?
Well, Brian Burns is a good player. And Daniel
not for the
Jones.
Giants right now.
Okay, but he will make good plays for the Giants as his career goes along.
We'll see.
I understand what you're saying, where I am like, we had hesitation about the Brian Burns trade because he hasn't been an elite pass rusher. He's been a good pass rusher.
I mean, they set up the Daniel Jones contract to get out of it in 2 years.
So you drop after you lose McKinney and you give up a second round and a fifth round pick. So
because that's the thing with Burns.
Holes.
That's the thing with Burns, is because you not only, I mean, people said this about DJ. You didn't bring back McKinney. You didn't go out and sign a Christian.
Okay,
Wilkins.
but you could have kept McKinney if DJ's contract. You could have done both if DJ's contract's not on the books. So I disagree with that, but I understand where you're coming from. Where if Brian Burns is like this,
that was straight up a Joe Schoen move.
Oh yeah,
that, after 2022, the year that Jones had, kind of put Schoen in a corner where it's like we got to give Jones this contract, but nobody begged Joe Schoen to go out there and trade for Brian Burns. Nobody begged him to do that. If anything, it was away from the Giants' timeline of things. It's like, no, don't do that. We're not there yet.
Right.
So
So I understand where you're coming from, but I do disagree with that. But hey, we'll clean it up. We appreciate you guys. Sorry that you guys have to stick around for an 0-2 football team. I really do hate it for all of us Giants fans. But
Let us know what you think.
We'll see you on the next episode. Until then, let's go Big Blue.